Today we are talking about the dreaded queen versus rook and pawn ending. And I say dreaded because most of us have seen this thing in some book and looks like this dreary long line that you're somehow supposed to memorize. And what we've really learned at the ChessDojo is this is the kind of thing which really you can only learn through sparring. And it's important to understand that with a position like this, you should not be interested in studying it as if it were some objective truth that you're learning. No, the goal is much different. The goal is to beat someone at your level, in your cohort, 3 times in a row. If you can do that, then you have shown that you can do this ending. And we'll see it's different when you're playing some supercomputer versus even when I'm going to play Kostya here. I'm going to play an IM as my challenge, okay? I first did it with the bots. It was much harder. I did manage to do all the positions 3 times in a row there, but I want to use the examples against a human to show really what we're talking about. One of the things I want to stress is there's a bunch of rules about when this is winning and why, okay? But I'm going to save those for later because if you understand the method, then those rules will make a little bit more sense. First thing is, like our queen versus rook, I did a video on that called the jab method of the queen versus rook. You're usually not checking the black king. You are putting the black into Zugzwang, okay? So here we go, and boom. So let's talk about the first method or idea. White wants to get his king across, their king, across this barrier. Okay? Once that happens, I'm dreaming about getting behind the pawn. And to do that, obviously, I would have to flush the black king out. And we're going to see that in some examples. So again, this is my game against Kostya, my practice game. And already here, there's a little bit of difficulty here for Kostya. So if you imagine king c4, I'm coming in. Easy peasy. I've done the first stage. Okay, if rook b4, which is probably the most testing, I could say check to the miserable king, boom, and then here's a nice pattern, queen e6. Again, it's going to be about Zugzwang. The rook on b4 is going to have to move to let me through, okay? Hard, right? So Kostya plays here. Now it's kind of easy. Easy. And now I'm just going to win the pawn. And again, I have a video out of the jab method of the queen versus rook. Okay, so let's go to the next game where it can get a little tougher. One thing I want to stress is queen f3 I played in the last one. I'm just following an algorithm here. I don't sound like I'm memorizing something. Again, in your own games, this pawn on c5 is going to be in different places. Right? Okay. Now, notice that in this situation, it's a little bit harder now for me to pass that a4, a5 line because the black king is sitting there, kind of lying in wait. So this is the way it went. And that was Kostya's mistake. He's letting me forward. And we're going to look at how that went in just a second. But first, let's look at the tenacious defense. All right. We can flush the king. Totally possible to flush the king. But now notice, because the king is right up against us, they can mess with us like this. And it seems like we've done ourselves a disservice. However, this position is winning because the black king has been flushed out of their pocket. So let's imagine rook b4, check to the visible king, and then this nice Zugzwang here, and actually it's already done. Notice that our king can cross the line, but already it's very hard for black to move. As with rook versus king checkmate, as with queen versus rook, if black could pass, if they could say, Baus, I don't want to move, then this position would not be winnable, not even close. Okay, so that happens. All of these endgames, we have to have a taste for Zugzwang. Okay, let's go back and look at how my game with Kostya went. I'm coming forward. I've come forward. All right, and now Zugzwang. Delicious. So rook d4, pop, and now I go in. So I've gotten, let's call this to the next stage. And Kostya plays king c4. I come in. Rook a4, queen f4 check, and now I'm going to pick up the coconut. Okay? So, yeah, makes it look easy even though it is not. Couple things then to talk about as rules. But I'll tell you what, let's go actually to our next example, and we'll use this as talk about the rules. So this was, I think for many chess players, this is, when they think of fortress, this is what they think of. And this was actually discovered by Philidor like a gazillion years ago, the 1700s. Couple things to see about the position. One, very important to see that our queen cannot flush the black king out in the same way because there is no d9 square, right? I can't get back there. Two, black's rook has two moves where it's completely protected on e6 and c6. This position, or this kind of ending, is far trickier than I had realized. I think most GMs realize, honestly, because a lot of us, I think, have the sense that, doesn't really matter where the pawn is, it's going to be a draw. Not true. Also not true that if my king somehow gets past, that's going to be winning too. One of the funny things where I'm going to mock myself is, ages ago, Carlsen had this funny thing where he said he didn't believe in fortresses, and we were all kind of laughing about it. And when I think most GMs think of fortress, they think of precisely a position like this. But this kind of position, it can be really tricky, more tricky than you might realize. Now, I think there's one final position I want to show, and that's this one here. This one is instructive because the thing to realize is that black's rook only has one stable square to go to. There's no I6 square over here. There's no I6, right? So it's only G6 where the rook can go. That's a natural Zugzwang. And now, bummer for black, already the black rook has to go on an adventure where it might get gobbled up. So for example, here, check to the miserable king. And now the black king has to go to h6 because otherwise queen c8 will win the rook. Zugzwang, right? We are covering the a5 square. So the black rook has to come back. What do? Zugzwang again. And it does not matter where that rook goes. We will pick the thing up by the ladder trick, very similar to what we see in the queen versus rook jab method, okay? A couple things I want to say in closing. The closer it gets to the side of the board, the better chances black has of holding. And notice there, I'm saying chances because in a practical game, that's very important. In the middle of the board, it's going to be easier for white's king to sneak around. The other thing I discovered in playing, especially with playing the bots, not so much the humans, black gets very interesting chances for play when the pawn gets further and further down the board, okay? And there's a lot of tactics that can sometimes happen when the pawn becomes advanced. There's chances for stalemates, and there's all kinds of tricks as long as the black king is still in contact with that pawn. I learned that the hard way against the bots. So again, I want to stress about this ending. The goal should be not to have some kind of perfect understanding, but first, by practicing it with the bots, readying yourself, because the bots are much stronger. Chess.com has some great bots. You can choose all kinds of famous players you want to play against. And then, playing in a situation where you get 30 seconds to move, just like in a real tournament, and see if you can beat someone at your own level. All right, there it is. Bye-bye.